Hi, and welcome to another episode of What Does Will Think? As you saw in the very beginning of the video, this video will contain some spoilers of upcoming movies and TV shows that we review, so if you do not wish to have anything spoiled, then I would not recommend watching this video, so turn it off right now. Today's episode, we're talking about Thor Ragnarok, also known as Thor 3. And I gotta say, I just went and watched this weekend and I thought was pretty good. But before we get to my final say, we need to go things step by step. First, let's start with the characters. Thor has really changed throughout each movie. From the first movie, he came from a son who did not take what his father thinks seriously. He had to learn a life lesson while being banished to Earth. And then he finally realized what he was and finally accepted who he was and everything. In Avengers, he was serious, working with the Avengers and all that, being a little funny. Number 2, he was a little bit more serious and still a little bit more funny, but he was really a serious character. And in Avengers 2, the same thing. And in this one, he was totally funny. I like the direction they went in this one because they made him funny, lovable, likable, because in the other movies he was just all stuck up and serious and knowing he had to take care of the realms of Earth and all that, and so I like the direction they went here. So yeah, Loki definitely is just as funny as Thor in this one. In the first movie, he was this jealous boy who grew up in the shadow of his brother and find out he was adopted and all that, and then he wants to take over the throne of Asgard. In Avengers, he was a guy leading an army, the Chitauri, and of course trying to take over the world but not successfully. Number 2, he works alongside Thor and we think he's dead, but then he takes over his father's throne. In this one, he is just as funny as Thor, so I like the direction they went here. Then, of course, you have the Hulk in here, just as funny, and, of course, it's just as likable. Mark Ruffalo plays a great Hulk. I don't think they could have gotten anyone better than him. Valkyrie was a pretty good new character. She was tough, and, of course, basically a female version of Thor. Heimdall, still an interesting character in the Thor series. Odin, of course, even though he had a few scenes in here, was pretty good. I also like Doctor Strange's cameo in here. I thought that was pretty funny. And of course, Jeff Goldblum as Grandmaster was he's probably hilarious. And as far as other characters, there's this other character called, I can't remember his name, but he's this rock guy. He is probably the most funniest character in the movie. So, yeah, and I think that's all the characters we have. And then, of course, the villains like Sturge and Helga, great characters, and I thought the characters were really super great. Now let's get to the story portion. Again, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. If you do not want to watch this part, turn off the video right now. So here we go. The story takes place after the event of Avengers Age of Ultron, as well as I think the events of during Civil War, but they don't mention it. Basically, Thor left Earth to search the universe for the other Infinity Stones since Age of Ultron. He hasn't been successful with it, and now he's trapped with this monster who says there's a prophecy saying that of Ragnarok, which basically means the destruction of Asgard and all of humanity, and of course he says he's going to stop it. He defeats the monster, goes back to Asgard, finds out that Odin was never really there. It was Loki in disguise, kind of continuing the continuity from number 2. And then they go to find Odin, finding out he's on Earth and Norway, according to Doctor Strange, who has a cameo in here. Even though it's one scene, it's a pretty funny cameo. They go there. Odin says he's dying and that he wishes to part his knowledge to Loki and Thor, knowing that they're the only protectors of Asgard. And also the coming of Thor's sister, basically Odin's firstborn, named Helga, who's the goddess of death. As soon as Odin dies, she appears. Thor and Loki fight her, but find out she's a really strong opponent. In fact, she even breaks Thor's hammer. Yes, this is the first Thor movie where Thor loses his hammer and doesn't get it back. So that's how the movie begins. Then they go back to Asgard through the gate. Helga follows them through, throws them out through the portals. They end up in a strange planet where people are being used for gladiator games thanks to the Grandmaster played by Jeff Goldblum. And Thor is now being made to fight in the games, and in fact his opponent happens to be the Hulk. And we find out where the Hulk has been all this time, because at the end of number 2 he left the Avengers and went to the Quinjet, wherever he was, and somehow he ended up on this planet, and he's been fighting ever since, and he's the Grandmaster's Grand Champion. Meanwhile, in Asgard, Helga's taking over Asgard, killed all the armies, he even killed all of Thor's friends, which was pretty quick. I didn't really like that approach, and I know they were going to go dark with this, but it worked okay. Meanwhile, Thor's trying to work out a plan of escape of this planet, so he gets the help of Valkyrie, who's this woman who used to be part of the female warriors of Asgard, but then she left Asgard because of the death of her people against Helga, and she's been drinking her sorrows away and didn't want nothing to do with Asgard, even when Thor was there. And she decides to help him along with the Hulk. Meanwhile, Hulk turns back into Bruce Banner, even though Bruce Banner's been asleep as the Hulk for 2 years. Hulk's been taking over control, and then Banner, as soon as Thor opened a channel of Black Widow's last video, basically the love interest, he turns back into Banner. Now they team up together, they steal one of the Grandmaster ships along with Loki's help, even though he tries to betray him, and along with the other gladiator fighters who decide to start a revolution. They leave, they go to Asgard, and they go to fight Helena, or whatever her name is, and her army, who's been resurrected for the Eternal Flame. And then Thor feels like he can't beat Helga because she's too powerful, because he needs his hammer, but Odin says, you didn't need the hammer. The hammer was just a conduit for your powers to control. So it turns out he can summon lightning at will without the hammer. So he defeats Helga, basically finds out the only way to defeat Helga is to make the prophecy of Ragnarok come true. So he realized the only creature that could defeat Helga is the monster in the very beginning. He gets Loki to give the mass, bring him back to life. He destroys Asgard, but then he finds out he doesn't need... Asgard is just a place. The people are the true meaning of Asgard. So he saves everybody all the people of Asgard, gets them on the ship, leaves Asgard while it destroys, it blows up, and they go and search for a new home, and Thor finally accepts his role as the king. And that's the story of Thor Ragnarok. In conclusion, what do I think about this movie? I enjoyed it. In fact, I thought it was the best out of the Thor movies. The first Thor movie was pretty well done, pretty well executed. It had some funny bits, but it was too serious, but hey, it was okay. His role in the Avengers, even though I don't count it as a Thor movie, was pretty cool. And the fact that he was working with a team and being funny was pretty cool. Second Thor movie got a little better, but it was still dark and still serious, and some parts were funny. Avengers 2 definitely was good, even though Thor was barely in some scenes, but he came towards the very end and fought and all that. Still pretty good. And he got a little funnier in this one. This one, I love the fact that they decided not to be so serious and decided to go in a funny routine. It's kind of the same comedy as Guardians of the Galaxy. It's pretty funny. The music is pretty awesome. The fact they have the Led Zeppelin from the teaser trailer in the movie and the soundtrack, I thought that was a pretty good touch. As well as some really cool 80s-like music that you'll hear in the movie. I thought was pretty well done. Jeff Goldblum was awesome. All the other people in there, even Stan Lee's cameo was funny in the movie. You'll see who he is. It's a pretty funny cameo. It seems like his cameos are getting better and better. The Rock guy is probably my favorite of the character in the movie because he's the funniest. He keeps saying things like, oh, we got a ship, and if you want to come up, you want to join us, big fella? And he just sounds so funny and so sincere. Anyway, you'll get a kick out of this movie. They even throw certain references in the movie. Like, in fact, there's a scene where Thor's in the chair going through a tunnel of brightly colors while getting an introduction about who the Grand Master is. And they play the theme from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And when I first sat there, I'm like, wait a minute, that's from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory when they go through the tunnel. And it's so funny. I'm sorry, I'm just laughing while thinking about it. Anyway, this is a tongue-in-cheek Thor movie. It's funny, it's entertaining, it's great to watch. The visual effects are just as awesome. The story's great. The characters are just great. So you'll get a kick out of this. So I really recommend it. So in conclusion, what do I think? 2 thumbs up. It was awesome. Anyway, that's all I have to tell you about it. And thank you for watching, and I will see you next time on What Does Will Think.